Hi, everyone who's tuned in. My name is Stephanie Truter. And also just thank you to GDG for hosting tonight. It's really awesome. I've been a talent advisor at OfferZen since July 2018. And for those of you who might not know, OfferZen is basically an online marketplace. And as a TA, I help candidates on our platform through their job search journey. So, a bit about my background. I have my honors in psychology from the University of Stellenbosch, and I'm also a qualified psychometrist. So, if you think like personality assessments, EQ assessments, so those are the kind of things I specialized in. And on a little bit of a side note, I'm actually fortunate enough to be living in France for the last 8 months. So, in today's topic, something that I do on a regular basis, even a daily basis, is speak to my candidates about selecting a salary, thinking about salary, and all that goes into that, and also being able to negotiate a salary with a potential or even current employer. So, my experience at OfferZen has really taught me a lot about what works and what doesn't, and I'd love to be able to share with you a bit of those insights this evening. So first off, we just want to say that we are hosting a swag competition. And if you know one thing about OfferZen, it is very much our swag. So we'd love to be able to give away a swag hamper to one lucky attendee this evening. So please feel free to enter by just scanning the QR code. If you don't capture it now, I'll show it again at the end of the presentation. Okay, great. So before we dive into things, I'd love to give you a bit of context just around my presentation and like how to negotiate your salary and really what this all means. So the purpose of this chat is really just to share some insights and advice around salary negotiation. So you might ask, but why would we even chat about this? Well, it's something that really like affects us all at one point or another, be that when considering an offer or even just addressing your salary with your current employer. And this evening, I really want to be able to equip you to have the conversation, and hopefully, my experience is able to help in this regard. So, interestingly enough, according to research, women are actually less likely than men to negotiate their salary offers. So, for instance, one study of graduating MBA students found that only half of the men negotiated their offers compared to only 1/8 of the women. So, I mean, just from my own personal experience, if I compare it from when I got my offer letter and to when my brother got his offer letter, when I got my offer letter, I didn't even consider to negotiate. But my brother, you can bet your bottom dollar that he definitely negotiated his. So that's just another example. So as I mentioned earlier, OfferZen is an online job marketplace, and our mission here really is to help people unlock their potential. And to do this, we believe we can help people make meaningful connections in a community where sharing and learning is encouraged. So I'm here this evening really hoping to share some of my learnings that I've gained over the last 2 years. So to get us started, let's paint a little bit of a picture. So you've just gone through the job search process and you've now received an offer, or better yet, you're actually having a salary discussion around what you're looking for in terms of salary. So what now? So with that picture in mind, I'm going to be covering a few points to hopefully make salary negotiation no longer feel so daunting, but rather something that is practical and achievable. So a few things I'll be covering is: when would you consider having a negotiation? What factors to consider? What should your mindset be? What does a successful negotiation look like? And then just some final takeaway points. So what does this look like in practice? So when would you consider having a salary negotiation? So if you think of it, the term salary negotiation really gets thrown around quite a lot, but what are actually the practical aspects of when you would have these kind of conversations? So a few potential scenarios would be: one, you're considering entering the job market. In this regard, it's always good to really have a thought out process and idea of what your ideal salary amount would be and why you decided on that. So this really helps create an alignment from the get-go. So does that fit in with the company's budget for the role? Are there benefits important to you for going forward? And what if a company doesn't have these additional benefits? Another scenario, you've got an offer, but you're not actually happy with it. So you want to be able to negotiate it. Bear in mind, if you are actually happy with the offer, then you shouldn't just negotiate for negotiation's sake. There really should always be a clear motivation as to why you're negotiation and why you're negotiating. And if you just do it for just because, it could be quite a slippery slope. Another scenario, your salary review is coming up and you want to be able to motivate for a salary that you're hoping for, and thus you need to start thinking about the kind of conversation you'll be having with your team lead manager. And another scenario is just the current salary you are on at the moment you're not happy with, and you want to be able to negotiate that for a different package and want to be able to chat to your team lead or your manager around this. In the end, these are not the only kind of scenarios there are, but they are a few that I have encountered quite a lot over my time at OfferZen. So, a few things to remember when thinking about salary negotiation. Keep it top of mind that it is very much a conversation with another human being who probably at one point in time also had to go through these kind of conversations. A keyword here in salary negotiation is negotiation. So be willing to reach a compromise so that the final result works for both you and the other party involved in this discussion. And don't forget, there really is always an opportunity to have a negotiation conversation. There's no rule or best practice that says it's bad to negotiate. It's really all about how and why you do it that counts. So now hopefully you've got a bit of a better idea of when are some key times to have the conversation around salary. But the next step to consider would be like, what factors would you actually consider? So when it comes to salary negotiation, there are a lot of factors, and I likely won't even be able to cover all of them. Initially, one would think it's limited to monetary value, but there's actually a whole lot of other factors that come into play when considering negotiating an offer. So even before you have an offer, I would suggest that you have a clear picture in mind of what you'd like and what you believe is realistic in terms of a salary package going forward. So the reason I say realistic is because we'd all love to be able to earn R1 million a month. However, the likelihood of that is really slim. Also, it's important to consider the value you can add to a company. So, for your salary, consider cost to company, your overall package, and then also consider things such as your net salary, what you're going to be getting in your bank account at the end of every month, and then also if you'd like any additional benefits such as like medical aid contributions, provident fund contributions, travel allowance, etc. From there, I would say it's a good idea to understand how an offer is structured. So, as I like mentioned, cost to company, gross salary, net salary, as well as what benefits are included and which are compulsory. Um, are there bonuses? What is included in the cost to company package from those bonuses? And how many leave days do you get? You name it. As I mentioned, there are many factors to consider. So, a good way to go about negotiating an offer is essentially to look firstly at the breakdown of the offer. In this, always feel free to ask for a mock dummy payslip. This will be able to show you the monetary breakdown in terms of base salary, compulsory benefits, tax, UIF, net salary. What you can then do is compare what is important to you in a package going forward with the mock payslip. So if the mock payslip, for example, doesn't actually provide you with enough information, really feel free to ask the person you're interviewing with for more information, as well as potentially a draft contract so you can look at the finer details. Another factor to consider when looking at an offer is your growth trajectory. So, where do you see yourself within the company in the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, and how does it align with your vision for your career? And then another factor is the growth of the company. So, for example, if they're a startup, it might actually be worthwhile to consider if equity or profit share is on the table. So, this could be a good factor to consider as like an additional benefit or perk in the package. And usually that wouldn't be included in your cost to company package. Also, factors such as 13th check, performance bonuses, leave days, remote working, office equipment are also kind of things to consider. So when thinking of your salary, it's really important to also consider what you're currently earning. As much as this shouldn't be the sole factor, it is definitely something that does come into play. Most companies are comfortable to give a 10 to 15% increase in salary. Usually this is when changing jobs. However, this can be a bit different with regards to internal reviews. So if you are looking for an increase above that in terms of cost to company, you would just need to be able to have a strong motivation to carry through to your manager or the person you're interviewing with, as they would often need to be able to motivate it to the finance team, HR, exco, you name it. Additionally, also remember that often your salary is a reflection, but only to an extent, of the value that you're able to bring to the company. So if you have data points that show and support the value that you bring to the table, this would definitely help your conversation. So, such as your performance at work or how well you did in the interview process, this is usually quite closely related to technical aspects of the interview process. So keep that in mind as well. So we've looked at the breakdown of salary and all the factors that one could consider. What we'll do now is look a little bit more at what kind of mindset one can adopt when thinking about having a negotiation. So to make it simpler, I thought I'd rather set it out with some practical pointers to adopt our mindset when we negotiate. So firstly, you want to be able to convey to the person that you're negotiating with why. From their perspective, it makes sense that you're negotiating. So it's really good to have a clear picture in your mind as well, as this will likely come up. And then also be prepared and set a time to have the conversation. It really should be planned and not a spontaneous, oh, by the way, kind of conversation. If it's planned, it really shows to them that you're taking this conversation and situation seriously. Third, you'd also want to be able to signal to them that you really do care about the company relationships, and your excitement to join them or continue growing within the company is really still very prevalent for you. And that is not only down to rands and cents in the end. A nice strategy to use is the I-we strategy. So with this, like, be really careful of watching your wording and of only using terms such as I the whole time, and make sure really to highlight as such both sides of the coin. As such, this links quite closely to being able to convey to the person that you're speaking to that you understand their perspective of the situation as well and have factored that in. So these are really just a few guidelines to think about this all, and I hope that they provide a bit of a mental framework to work from. So now you're probably thinking, okay, so I've got these kind of pointers, but what does a successful negotiation actually look like in the end? So as hard as it might be, a successful negotiation doesn't necessarily mean that you got everything you wanted in the end, but rather it's a compromise between you and the person you're interviewing with and negotiating with, and ensuring that it's a compromise rather than just bending or submitting to the decision at hand. So your voice really does matter in this situation, and this is a key area where you really should feel that you can voice it. So having that mindset that you are indeed willing to negotiate rather than enter the discussion with a list of demands will really set you up quite well to have this discussion and those going forward. So think of it like negotiation is a skill. It takes time and practice, so it's really possible that the first time it doesn't go that smoothly. But that's where learning takes place. If you haven't, there's a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss and Tolraz. It's really a great resource to read regarding this. It's basically focused on FBI hostage negotiation situations. So as much as it's relevant in terms of transferability, it's also really just an interesting read. From my experience, though, the best approach when considering a negotiation is really just playing open cards. So be clear about what you'd like, but also being willing to show where you are willing to compromise um, to reach a decision that really suits you both. And for me, the way in which a company as well as a potential employee handle a negotiation like this really speaks volumes. So keep that in mind, approaching the conversation in an open and professional manner every step of the way, as you really don't want to burn any bridges. And like Moira Rose would say, to bring it home, This evening, I really just wanted to be able to convey that you have the power, and if I even had to go so far to say the responsibility to have these conversations, because in the end, that really is what they are. They're conversations. So, some takeaways from tonight that I'd like to highlight. There is always an opportunity to negotiate, and I hope that you feel a little bit more confident to do so. Going prepared and have a clear motivation of what you're hoping to achieve from the discussion and why. Salary is not just limited to what you get in terms of money at the end of the month. There are a lot of other factors to consider in an overall package. Be willing to compromise and play open cards in communication. So, really, that the person that you are speaking to will perceive what you're saying as legitimate as well as mutually beneficial for them and the company. And then feel free to practice. Use a friend, a family member, and practice having these kind of conversations. Because as we all know, practice makes perfect. That's it from me. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I think that was really, really an awesome talk, and everyone was probably looking forward to it. I think just a quick question. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this,
Go
but
for it.
is the a good enough reason that you can give? So you mentioned that you need to know why you need to mention why you're negotiating. Is the a good reason and a bad reason around that?
So there are sometimes. I think it would really depend on the situation and probably also why you're in the job market. So there's different factors in that. I would say probably a bad reason is just because you can. It's really hard to be able to motivate like that with solid data points. Good reasons, I would say, link back to showing that you are technically sound. You, for example, smashed the tech assessment or you're meeting all your KPIs, those kind of things. Those are probably easier and stronger motivations. And then other factors that are probably also good kind of reasons, if I could say it as such, is looking at overall salary package, what's market related, all those kind of factors, and also just considering where the company is at. I mean, you'll often see the size of a company can also impact a salary just because of financial resources at the company. But yeah, I would say it really depends on the situation, and it's best to practice it against someone, because sometimes in your own mind you think it sounds super reasonable or like it doesn't sound good, and someone's like, have you said that out loud? um, so yeah.
All right, cool. We've got a question from Kurt. The question is, how do you deal with a straight no when you ask to have a salary negotiation?
Great. So yeah, Kurt, I think that happens more often than we sometimes realize. I would say in that scenario, you'd probably have to do like a reflection of what your kind of motivation is in terms of, asking for the salary negotiation. If it's a super reasonable thing and it's just continuously no, it's potentially even worthwhile to speak up to your employer, even in a more serious manner of not just salary negotiation, but like where is your career going forward, and if it is still at the company you're at. Because if it's a real big concern for you that you're continuously feeling and it's never been addressed, with all the power that you can do to have the conversation, it might be a thing of letting them know that, well, maybe I start the kind of job search. But I
Awesome.
really would say in the input, like just keep trying as much as you can. Like set the meetings, schedule the interview, give the reasoning. If team lead doesn't want to listen, there's oftentimes companies do have processes where you could go to HR. I know it's always a little bit awkward, like jumping over someone in that, but there are sometimes processes that one can follow within your own organization to try and take that role as best as possible.
Cool. And some of the feedback, people are saying that it's awesome tips. Thank you so much. What's your take on counter offers? That's the next question from
No,
Tashing.
that's a really great question. So it's a hard one. Like in one way, one wants to say like your will says like never ever ever take. I think a stance that I would probably look at it is like why only once you've told your company that you're looking to leave, or hopefully you've had the conversation, but once you show them another offer, that only then they are willing to make you the counter offer. So think about why they're doing it, perhaps. And also, if 6 months down the line, the issues haven't changed for why you were looking to leave. I think you're answering all the questions here for me. It's very much that, like, if it's not going to resolve the issues, but I really would suggest before you even start the job search, you're having that conversation with the company. So if they wanted to make a difference for you, they should be able to do it then, instead of only once you've shown them another offer. So my normal stance is I do have to agree with Gilwald. Like, usually try not to, but there are sometimes circumstantial things that one didn't even expect, perhaps.
Great. Okay, cool. The next one, cool. We'll just wrap up from the questions. And thank you so much for joining us. We've learned a lot from you today.
Perfect. Such a pleasure. And there's just the QR code if anyone missed it earlier.
Okay.
Perfect. Cool.
Cool. We can quickly scan, but thank you so much. Really enjoyed your talk.
Such a pleasure. Bye, everyone.